Thank you. Right. Let's get this rolling. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you giving up some of your time this evening for this very important subject about our country. I'm Gunther Wallendorf, the CVO of the New Nation Education Nonprofit Organization. Allow me to give you a quick rundown of the webinar series and its purpose. But first, let me introduce you to my team of experts, the wonderful Dr. Arthie Moore-Roberts. Arthie, as the owner and co-founder of Celebrating Humanity International, Pty Limited, Key Leadership Institute, Pty Limited, Arthie Moore, Pty Limited. She also is renowned as an unusual keynote motivational speaker and international facilitator of exclusive leadership programs globally. As our diversity and inclusion specialist, she has helped to develop the Celebrating Humanity programs, transformational team building, diversity training, leadership training, and team conflict resolution strategies across South Africa, Namibia, Swaziland, Zambia, London, UK, Ireland, USA, and Hong Kong. Keynote speaker, facilitator, trainer, consultant to boards of directors and management teams. Certified John Maxwell leadership coach, trainer, facilitator, speaker. A finalist in the Rising Star Award South Africa 2014-2015 for professional services and entrepreneurship. Semi-finalist for Women in Business, Sanlam Awards. Acknowledged by Mrs. Graça Michelle Mandela for the development or developing leadership amongst women of South Africa. And a former honorary board member of Diversity Inclusion Online University, USA. Now, Dr. Arthie Moore-Roberts' bio is like a Bible, so I'm not going to go into the rest because it's just too long. Let me introduce you to the next expert in our midst, and that's Jan Roberts. Mr. Jan Roberts is the co-founder of Key Leadership Institute, Pty Limited, and the founder of JR Speakers Club based in South Africa and Scotland. As an international Les Brown Platinum keynote speaker, he has already spoken on 4 continents about a variety of subjects from personal development, bullying, human behavior, and living intentionally to leadership. As an exclusive director of the President's Advisory Council members with the John Maxwell team, his focus is to change the impact the way people are developing using world-class innovative methods that are proven and international. Jan Roberts also has a bio second to none, so I'm not going to go any further on that. And let me introduce you to our third expert this evening, is Andreas Jacobus Schlemmer. He is currently retired, but has been employed for the last 3 years at the Eskom Expo for Young Scientists as the provincial coordinator in the Eastern Cape. Andre has 40 years experience in education. He has experience in all learning areas and taught mainly mathematics and science. His 40 years include 8 years as principal at White River Primary School in Mpumalanga, 2 years as principal at La School Excelsior in Port Elizabeth, and 12 years as principal at Settlers Park Primary School, also in Port Elizabeth. Andre holds a BA degree and diploma in education with a major in botany and zoology. He has a B.Ed degree in biblical studies and continues these studies. He has an ACE diploma in management, which he completed in 2009 at NMU. He followed a 2-year course in mentorship with Northwest University during 2016. Andre is passionate about nature conservation, and as an honorary ranger in the Kruger National Park, his love for science led to the Settlers Science Expo, which he organized for 12 years. As an experienced expo judge at the Esquin Expo for young scientists, he uses his field of experience in his daily activities as a provincial coordinator in the province to assist learners with their projects. He has a great passion for leadership development and 21st century skills development. Thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate you more than you know. I would just like to now run through a brief description of the webinar for this evening. We're really going to be talking about scaling a business, and we're really specifically talking about scaling a business in South Africa and why it's become so difficult. A few questions that I have on the subject are things like, how do we help businesses grow in South Africa to create a thriving economy for all who live here? With the numbers I will be discussing in this presentation, let me go into that now. I'm going to take you through a quick 5-minute slide presentation to give you an idea of the current situation in South Africa with our unemployment and all these issues. The best way to explain it is by looking at the population demographic of South Africa. This is excluding school children. So basically what I've tried to do is try and show how many people are actually in need of help in our country. And school children are not income earners, I've left them out of the picture, but we will discuss them at the end of the slideshow. So if we have 7 million employed taxpayers in the country. If we take the 14 million off the 60 million people in the country, that will leave us with 46 million people that are or should be employable or income earners. 7 million are employed taxpayers. We have another 7 million which are low income earners. Together, these people make up 30.4% of that population group. These are your customers. These are your only customers because these are the only people earning money in the country. We then have 2.5 million disabled. We have more than 2.5 million disabled, but we've got a split between some people are employed and some people are unemployed. We have 7.5 million unemployed people according to the government. We have another 20 million odd people on social grants in this country. We have 1 million school dropouts, and that is, there's a lot more than that, but I've just taken an average of what it is probably per year. And we have about 1 million students that are unable to pay their tuition fees. Together, these people make up 69.5% of our population. 32 million people needing to earn some form of income. Would you not like some of these people to be your customers? And that brings me to let's quickly go the school children in our country. Million children going into school each year in South Africa, which means we should have 1 million people leaving school each year, which means we should have 1 million people each year coming into the job market and earning money, which means you could have 1 million more customers if they were earning money. The first issue we have is that we have a 56% dropout rate. So 560,000 kids are not making it to the end of their school career, which means they're not earning money. If they're not earning money, those 560,000 cannot be your customers. So that'll leave us with 460,000 that should go on to college and university. Over the last 10 years, our highest employment rate in any one of those years was only 250,000 people. So even on the higher education level, we're losing another 100,000 kids or youngsters or young people that can't get jobs. And we also have this issue where the government created jobs are actually not the type of employment we are seeking for people, because government employment is another burden on society. On those 14 million taxpayers, each time the government expands the number of employees, that comes from the 14 million people that are paying the taxes at the moment. So I hope you understand from this picture that I've just painted for you is that we have a very small tax base in the country. And the only way we're going to grow that tax base is to help people become employed. And that can be self-employed. It can be opening businesses. It doesn't matter. It's just that we all know there's no large corporation coming along in the future to employ thousands of people. It's not going to happen. I would now like to ask each person on the panel, expert on the panel, to give us their overview or what they see the future of employment in South Africa. But I think we should start with Mr. Andreas Schlemmer, so he can give us an overview of from the schooling side of it before the people even get to the employment market. Andreas, please, if you could give us some of your expertise on the subject.
Yes, I was still muted. So thanks, Gunther. Yeah. With all these technologies, you know, we work with all these type of things, and then all of a sudden you get used to it, and after a while you forget to click a little button, and so everyone can hear you as well. But very interesting facts that you've introduced us with. This is basically the same pattern that we have found each year in the education. You sit with all these huge numbers of learners entering education, and then only a very small percentage of them that complete the 12 years of schooling and then go into the marketplace. And I think this is one of the crucial things we need to address. You see, if you look at financing side, budgets, it's getting smaller each and every year. You talk to any government institution or any institution at all, everyone is trying to save somewhere along the line. And in the whole process, it's the learners that suffers the most, because the attention that the learners should actually get, they're not getting it. The overcrowding of classrooms, just the pressure that's been put onto teachers to get through the curriculum each and every year. We come through a very difficult period now with COVID as well, and we know all the challenges that goes along with that as well. So yes, I think there's a huge lot of challenges that we are looking at, and then at the end of the day, we need to try and make a difference, and we need to make add some value to each and every learner that comes to our school and into our system, and then leaves the system as a better person that goes into the marketplace. So yes, there's a couple of things. If you just look at the facet of one size fits all, you know, we're getting so used to that, but we need to look where are the specific needs. The difficult part is to get the learner to absolutely make the best of their school careers. So, and with the one size fits all, not every learner a paper cut for that position. So yes, it becomes a very difficult problem as well. A good challenge in a certain way, but something that we need to look at. The language barriers that we see, the attitude problems, I mean, the discipline problems that we have. That is only to mention a couple of things, but these are the things that we need to address, and then we need to work with that. And the numbers in the classrooms, I mean, if you sit with these overcrowded classrooms, I've been working the last 3 years with ESCOM Expo for Young Scientists in a lot of the rural areas. And you go and visit some of those schools and you look at just what they need. You can't believe how they still make a success, but they still have these challenges. So definitely a lot of things. There's a lot of things that we can talk about, but I personally think these are the things that we need to address and make sure that we try and create a better future for our learners as well. There's two things that I need to mention about the attitudes of our learners. You basically get the two components. You get a lot of learners. They are like consumers. They want, but you don't always get the contributors, and that they want to add some value and make a change in their own lives as well. And I think if we can just focus a little bit on the attitude of learners at school levels, and I mean from primary school right through to high schools as well. I think the discipline, a couple of years ago, we were looking at some of the problems, and it's just increasing each and every year. And if we don't do something about that, it is going to have a snowball effect into our economy system as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Andre. Appreciate that input. Excellent stuff. And we'll come back to you with a question or two later. I would like to now ask Dr. Arthie Moore-Roberts to give us some input on the way forward for young people and entrepreneurs as far as future jobs go or employment.
Thank you so much for that, Gunther and Andre. I know that there's so many different aspects to address solutions in this country. And I believe that the first thing that Andre was talking about was mindset. We're talking about the attitudes and the education system. It's not just the mindsets of the young people. We actually need to realign the mindsets of the people that are ruling the education system and implementing systems that are failing everybody. And they're not just failing the young people, they're failing the communities, they're failing the young adults, they're failing the work environment, because work-ready students should have the confidence to walk into a job knowing already the baseline foundations of discipline, of openness to learning, a willingness to be inquisitive, values that resonates with hard work is a no-brainer and it should be second nature, not something that I'm forced to do. So when we're talking about the employment rate in this country, the mindset is not one that should be resonating with, I'm entitled to an income, but I don't want to do the work. And that is a disease that South Africa actually suffers from. And when we're wanting to realign the education system, we actually need to look at the mindset and the behaviors of the people that lead not just our country, but entire nations. When you've got people at higher levels of influence, talking into destructive behavior as something that is acceptable, you're going to be creating an environment where you see the schooling system, when somebody doesn't like the way that a rule is implemented or they're being brought to discipline, they have got more rights as young people to burn down an entire school, a classroom, I mean, even a library, the very thing that brings education, but everybody's crying about the lack of education. And so when you think about it from that point of view, who is to blame? And so far, we're demanding a better education system, but nobody takes responsibility, but that it is the adults who created this disease. And while we all try to find solutions to implement into the education system, we don't realize that we are the very problem who actually are the causes. And what we're dealing with right now is symptomatic. And if we look at the causes, we need to realign the mindsets of people to the point where, yes, entrepreneurship is the key. However, if the schooling system does not embrace maths, accounting, and all of the various tools that young people need as a foundational phase of engaging with these subject matters in a different way, it's not practical. There's no self-learning. There's no encouragement in that way. There's no accelerated learning practices. And these things, these are tools and techniques that have been readily available for a number of years, 30 to 40 years already. And there are some schools that are privileged enough to implement it. And here's where the difference is. It shouldn't be a privilege. It should be an imperative that every single schooling system has this, where you're encouraging people to not just become academics, but they need to get to the point where they take it into practical solution-based interaction. And when you look at the way that we talk into education, we've dumbed it down. Education is supposed to be fun, and it's supposed to be an environment where we want to push ourselves to engage, to feel empowered, to entice a different way of learning about the world at large, not regurgitating things that makes us look clever, because we get a percentage based on memory rather than practicality. And the reality of entrepreneurship is it's a nice to have for a lot of people, but they don't understand the amount of work that goes into it. You've got to have the discipline and the ability to network, to have people skills, to have speaking skills, presentation skills, understand how to use your computer, the software, and all of the various accounting systems practically. And to have that kind of knowledge and expertise allows you to bring in the right people with the right expertise, and you surround yourself, and that's how you build a successful business. And if you don't have that kind of knowledge, what I saw in a work ready program run by a bank, which was really wrongly done, was the approach was to let's create entrepreneurs. But what they did was gave a 4-hour module on marketing, on pricing, on preparation, and all of the simple things that people need. 4 hours. They open up a bank account, but nobody tells them the reality that when you open up the bank account, you need to maintain it. And then there's bank charges. And if you don't pay that, they put you in debt, they blacklist you. And then eventually, if you can't do anything, you get removed from the system, where you will in the future be removed from having access to loans and to anything where accounts are even limited. So nobody's talking about practicality and realities. And being an entrepreneur since I was 19, I learned the hard way, and that was by partnering with people who've got more knowledge and expertise than I do. But that takes courage. And many community-based cultures, people don't have the courage to say, I don't know, can you help me? Because that is not part of the schooling system. Engaging people to understand that coaching and mentoring is an actual skill to have. We don't know how to use our social media platforms and things like that to the best of our ability. So all of us skilled people will talk knowledgeably about this stuff, and it'll become a motivational speech. But the reality is that the schooling system doesn't implement that as a tool or a technique that everybody needs to have as a basic understanding of the real world. And so what we're doing is we're failing all of our young people because we're not demanding more from the education system. And I think that we are to blame. And the solution is that if we are all sitting at a level of access to experience, knowledge, wisdom, and all of the areas of understanding business from different levels, why aren't we partnering and collaborating with schools and say, when we can add a couple of hours of our time, come in and do talks, various aspects of business, of entrepreneurship, of becoming work ready. Ask us any questions, whether it is branding, whether it is how we present ourselves, how do we speak to people, how do we handle conflict. Let's talk into real life stuff that makes a difference to young people and gives them the confidence to become the entrepreneurs we demand in order to realign unemployment and the money issues in this country. So I think it's us who need to become more collaborative partners in this whole system.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asimwe. Roberts and I will definitely have some questions for you later. So, and now I would like to ask Jan Roberts if he would just give us some input on his thoughts on employment and future jobs. What are you thinking?
Well, thanks, Gunther, and thanks to Andre and Dr. Aarti already, because they said so much and so much wisdom, and I'm nearly fearful to follow those. But it's and so much comes to mind when they're speaking, because you start with young people, and let's face it, the problems we have today haven't started today. And this has been a long time coming, and we've seen it a long time coming. And Andre already mentioned it as well. Yes, the kids need motivation, and the classes are too big and all that kind of stuff. But there is a big problem at the top that is not being dealt with. I mean, the promises of investment by the leaders, the promises that they're going to make changes, and we year after year the promises are there, and it has nothing to do with politics. I don't do politics anyway, but it is with leadership. You can't keep promising the country, the nation, that things will get better, and yet there is nothing happening at the top. Now, when we talk about leadership, people always are very quick to blame storm, I call it. They blame everybody else, the neighbor, the government, the cat, the dog, the spouse, their parents, their environment. But I talk into this as well, we're all leaders. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're 4-year-old, 14 or 40 or 104, we're all leaders at different levels in our lives. But if we are going to create better leaders tomorrow, we need to give them the input they need now at a young age, where they're vulnerable and open still. Because I remember when I was a young kid, and that shows my age as well, and Andre might have been the same, but when they asked us what we wanted to be, it was astronauts and firemen and those kind of people. Now when you listen to them, they want to become coders and computer analysts and all those kind of wonderful things. We didn't even know what they meant at that age. But yes, of course, things are changing. But one of the big problems as well is, there is no real communication, and you can see it with the younger people today, that to have an effective communication is getting more and more difficult. Now, that is not necessarily only their fault. They are sitting on electronic gadgets that we couldn't even dream about in our age, but we also need to help them. We also need to lead them. And Aarti said it as well, that it's partly our responsibility, and we have to have a certain accountability as parents, as adults, and as leaders, whether it's in government or communities or municipalities. But we can't keep going like this and say, okay, yes, talk is cheap. And quite often I say it, when all is said and done, usually more is said than done. But we need to start taking action now, because the longer it goes on, the more, and entitlement was mentioned by both as well, that, there is so much entitlement because of what happened in the past. And, we can never, and there is no way that we can forget what has happened in the past. But if we keep one foot in the past, we'll never go forward. We are here right now. We can't change the past, however much all of us, I'm sure, would have wanted to, that it had been different, but it hasn't been. So we are here now, and there's young people in school now, they only learn it from their parents, their communities, their history books and all that kind of stuff, what happened in the past. But how can we help them not to forget the past, but to say, we need to remember the past, because we must ensure that it never happens again. But how can we move them forward so they become the leaders that ensure it never happens again? Because at the moment and I don't even want to go into the stories that go around at these times. We've been through some terrible years lately, where kids around the world, millions more, have lost such an important part of their education, because they not only couldn't go to school, but they couldn't connect at a heart level with their fellow students, with the fear, the anxiety and depression that's been there. And I think what what is very important, and both myself and Artie and you as well, Gunther, we are also involved in values-based leadership. Now that is nothing more, because people say values, oh, leadership, oh, that's definitely them. No, we're talking about basic human values, and Andre mentioned it as well. Simple things like a bit of discipline, a little bit integrity, a little bit of wanting to learn, because young kids are hungry to learn, but it seems that that fire gets blown out by the over full classes and the lack of attention they all get, and the restrictions getting put on them. And then the last 2 years would have done a lot of damage, as I said. But we need to make sure that we have some leadership that stands up and say, okay, we need to do something if we want to have a better country. It starts with the adults, but certainly if we don't create the leaders of tomorrow that we actually need today, in 10 years or 20 years time, we're going to have the same conversation, that the education is lacking. The leadership is not looking at the education. They look at, yes, and climate change and renewable energy. These are the things. But we cannot forget about the people. Technology moves on faster than I can keep up with. And Andre mentioned it as well, these buttons, and I don't even want to keep up with it all. But what we need to remember is the people, the human aspect is getting left behind, big style. So I think we need to bring basic human values. And what they do is they get people of all ages to sit together, because that's another thing. We need to come together, regardless of race, culture, religion, and political affiliation. We need to come together and start connecting at the heart level, not just here. Because what can we do from the heart level? How can we get communication going again? Because Warren Buffett said it many years ago when he was asked if he could change anything, and he's done pretty well in life. But if he could change anything, he says, if I could change anything in life, I would have started to learn to public speak and to learn to communicate at an earlier age, because he was scared stiff. And he eventually went on a Dale Carnegie course. He forced himself to do it, and the rest, as I say, is history. But we need to get to communicate with our young people. Yes, we know some of the thing, and Andre is an expert in this because of his time spent on the shop floor, on the ground. But we certainly need to make sure that we pay that attention. We find out what is actually needed. And yes, we need to bring these new. There's now certain schools that bring coding and certain things because kids are interested in different things, but we need to keep things interesting for them. Because unless we do that, and when we get them to sit together and communicate and get them off their electronics every now and then, rather than the kind of stuff they want to bring in the education system now, and I don't even want to go there. But I say, why don't we bring values in there? Because values connect people at the heart level. And we need to make sure we are also working with the Self-Learning Revolution Academy by Dr. Jeanette Vos. How can we get kids and adults alike to start that self-learning? Because our industries are failing because people are not getting the upskilling and the reskilling necessary. But, when we don't skill them right in the first place, and as Artie said as well, work readiness. Most of them even if they get a degree, they get a piece of paper, and then what? I mean, I had a panel discussion. I moderated one a few weeks ago, and one of the CEOs, one of the top members there, they were all CEOs and top members of organizations. He said, I walked with a piece of paper into an organization, and I was lost. I didn't know what to do. And I mean, he had a pretty good pass rate in his degree, but he says, I had absolutely no idea. And that's at the degree level. So what chance have the kids got who don't go to a degree, who want to go and start working? But we need to, yes, jobs need to be created because there is not enough of them. But there's got to be more opportunity, but we need to give them hope as well. Because as long as these kids have no hope, as long as the teachers have got no hope that they can make a difference because of the situation they find themselves in. And yes, there's plenty of parents that will look at the teachers and blame them for what's wrong. But, as parents, as adults, we need to start becoming more actively engaged so that they become work ready, so that they become the workforce of tomorrow, so that they become the leaders of tomorrow we really could be doing with right now.
Thank you very much, Jan. Great input there and an emphasis on future leadership. We are talking about how to change the direction of South Africa. I think by now we all realize that our country is slipping backwards fast and has been slipping backwards for 27 years. If we stop and do nothing, or we just let it continue, within 5 years, we're going to be another third world country on the continent of Africa. And I don't believe that any South African wants that to happen. So we're talking to small business owners, medium-sized business owners, and we know that you're struggling to keep your head above water because things have been deteriorating over the last 10 years, specifically at an alarming rate. Now, I don't want to be a messenger of doom here, but if we want to know the direction of our country, we only have to look at Zimbabwe. That's where we're heading. Here's a question for you. Why do you think so many hundreds of thousands of Zimbabweans come to South Africa for employment? And my second question, why do you think so many criminals from Zimbabwe and other African countries come to South Africa? And if you haven't thought about this before, then I've got to ask you why you haven't. Because it is an eye-opener. If we think about it, the answer to the first question, why are so many Zimbabweans in South Africa for employment? And I'm talking about at the farming level, I'm talking about basic employment. Because there's nothing in their own country. The country has got nothing. Why are the criminals here? Because firstly, there's nothing to steal in their country. And even if they stole something, there's nobody to sell it to. So they come to South Africa and our jails are 5-star compared to the ones in Zimbabwe. Is that what we want for our kids, for our grandchildren? Everything is in our power to make sure that we don't follow the path we're heading down at the moment. I would like to ask a question of Andre about the education. You spoke a lot about the education and what's not happening within the schools and stuff, but what about the funding? I mean, surely that funding is a key to how much we can actually give the children.
Good, very good question. And we all know how the school system are working on the different quintiles, quintile 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, where the quintile 1, 2, and 3 must probably get the most part of the budget from the education department, and schools governing themselves, then quintile 4 and 5 obviously look mostly after themselves, getting the least from the department or from government. So what we need to look at in general is, you know, we ask the question, who do we rely on? And that is a general question, not only in education, but in general. Who's going to look after us? Now, in my mind, if we cannot decide ourselves that I have to look after myself, I have to start with myself, whatever I want to do. Nobody else is going to look after me. And the more that we decide to look after ourselves and make a success of our lives, whatever we're going to do. And Jan has mentioned a couple of times the values, a value system where we can all be proud of, where we can all live by. I'm not talking about rules. I'm talking about values. The moment that a value becomes part of you, that defines who you are. And if we want to make a difference in this country, it has to start with me. If I can change, then obviously the next person next to me can also change. So I've already said I'm retired, but I will never be a retired person. I will always be busy with something. So at the moment, I do a lot of things. I do transport, I do maintenance, I do a lot of things. I work with workers, painters, builders. And when we start working together, it's not me supervising them. It's a fact that we work together. You know the difference when you take a brick in your hand and you put it on top of the next one. You take a paintbrush or something and you work with that worker. Immediately, the attitude of that person is changing. And again, whatever you do, you have to have pride. You have to have some sort of respect for the next person. The moment we can respect each other, there's a whole difference already. You know, we talked about the wrong things that happened in the past. But how can you make something right with another wrong? Two wrongs doesn't make it right. So we need to learn from the past, but we need to make some exceptional changes to make some improvements. And we haven't come to that part yet. It's easy to play the blame game, and we blame everything, and we want somebody to look after us, and they must provide. Remember what I said? You get a consumer or you get a contributor. So we need to change the consumer into a contributor. If you can contribute in this country, you add value. And that's where we need to make the biggest changes.
Thank you very much, Andre. Dr. Arthur Moore Roberts, I have a question for you as well. What would you recommend that we do at school level to change the approach of young people before they become young adults? You know, so we don't have a lot of arrogant, rude youngsters coming out of school. We have people that actually want to make change in their lives. What would you suggest?
Oh, that is a stunning question. And the reason is because my interactions with a lot of youngsters in different schools across this country, and here's the simplest one, is the stupidity of racism that is taught through the histories and embedded in their thinking. Because there's the simplicity of it. We always talk about racism as an adult disease. The challenge, though, is that we have taught it into our young people and ingrained in them that the color of a person's skin determines our ability to have more rights or entitlement, or somebody is superior or we're inferior. And that's the kind of mindset I was talking about earlier. And if you look at the reality of this country, we have got people just based on the color of their skin with the expertise and the skills that we desperately need to make this economy run, they're removed. Now, understand that we need to realign the injustices of this past, but it didn't mean that we've got to burn down a country to do so. I'm talking about balance. When you bring in the balance of the people who've got the skills and the abilities, and then you take out the schooling system curriculum that removes all of that in terms of practical experience, and you don't have people to connect them to, we are losing a battle that we brought upon ourselves. We never had a fighting chance. And if I had to find one thing that people could realign, is to remove this whole thing that people have got based on the color of somebody's skin, that you're worthy or you're worthless. That is a mindset that is so destructive that I've got young people that I'm mentoring right now from high school level to graduates. Yes, they're doing brilliantly in some of the areas that they find that they're passionate about. But nobody is actually taking them under their wing and saying, how can we take that passion and create it into something tangible that is an income generator? How can we take your idea and give you the resources or access to it so that you can prosper and grow? We don't have that growth mentality in this country. We've got, I'm entitled because of, or you don't deserve because of the color of your skin. And what we've done is dumb down people, including the education system, to nothingness. And then we put people into positions in the work environment and remove the support structures that allows them to succeed. We've then got bullying in the workplace, we've got harassment, and you've got entitlement on a very different level, where you've got genders versing each other. You've got people from LGBTQI+, you've got PWD, you've got different diversity, equity, inclusion issues, and people don't want to actually open up their thinking that this is a reality. That everybody's hating so much that they've forgotten how to be generous and how to bring compassion into play. We've forgotten that it is kindness. It's being kind is something that is free. And being kind means generously giving of your time and the resources that you've got access to, to help somebody else succeed without actually wanting anything in return. We've forgotten that simplicity of being human. And we're so fast in saying that our country is suffering from unemployment because of our education system. No, we've educated people to believe they're not good enough and that they'll never have a place in this country. We taught them that, and we need to unthink those thoughts and to replace it with something more powerful and more positive. And that is all of us connecting across the board. Remove all of this men versus women stories. Have courageous conversations about how can we guide and support each other? How can we bring resources into areas that are disadvantaged and don't have access to it? How do we connect with conglomerates and with people with IT and infrastructure and bring all IoT systems into the schooling environment so that they can get access to self-learning and to an education system that enables them? But that takes community coming together. It takes community leaders getting over their corruptive thoughts. It's taking big companies that love investing in communities for a social media upgrade on showing how brilliant they are, but they're useless in follow through or sustainability. It's showing how the community have got access to people wanting to donate their time, their effort and resources, but it gets stolen. There is corruption amongst people, and there's something within our country and in our culture where jealousy plays such a massive role that people don't want to see each other succeed. And that's wrong. That jealousy system, that umona thinking is what limits our ability to add value to each other. So if one community grows, we want to go and steal from them and destroy and say, or even kill the person to prove a point. If there is a school that is doing well, we'll go and burn down that school or deface that school to say, well, what are they getting that we don't have, that I don't have it, so you don't deserve it mentality needs to be removed, because it's not just in schooling area. You see it in parliament. When people talk over each other, the disrespect, there's no values. I mean, our leaders are showing that same stupid behavior. Well, how do we expect everybody else to have a brilliant education? When we bring the resources into environment, the one thing we got to keep looking at is what will it cost us to secure that stuff? Pay money for security, because the mindset of people is, if I can't have it, I'll destroy it, steal it, or I will take it and sell it to somebody else. I mean, that kind of, when I'm talking about mindset in this country, that's where we've got to change and adjust on every level. And that starts in the schooling environment. Discipline needs to be discipline of the mind, understanding that you got to earn everything that you receive and that you got to work for it. And it's not going to be handed out. And that you don't deserve to be putting your hand out and saying, well, I want funds and I want access. With graduates I'm working with now and young leaders coming into the entrepreneurship environment, the first question I'm asked is, what do you have to give to me for free? I want you to sponsor this. I need a laptop. I need a car. And I'm thinking, I'm not your bank. I worked for what I have earned. Where did you get this mentality from? And then there's the other thing of, I deserve access to funds. And when people do get funds, the first thing they do is a big, massive party, and new cell phones, new everything, and cars. And then when I ask, what about the resources for your business? Oh, no, it's not important. I need these things. So the thinking around entrepreneurship is not practical because it's not being taught in that way. And our teachers not being given the skills and ability to upgrade their teaching methodologies. So it's unfair to put all of the pressure on teachers and say it's their fault. What about the parents who just sit there and hope that teachers realign the value systems of the children that they failed to instill values within? So it's everybody's the problem, but resources are a key to upgrading the systems that we need to bring people into an environment where they can contribute meaningfully and succeed. It's got to be sustainable.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arthimo Roberts. Jan, I have a super question for you. If you had to give a young person in South Africa advice, say a school leaver that is not going to college or university, and they see no hope, what sort of advice would you give them?
Oh, that's a great question and very challenging, because I believe there is a majority of school leavers at the moment, knowing what the statistics are that have been mentioned earlier, who are certainly have no hope. I mean, it already starts in this while they're in school, that they've got no hope, because they see everybody in their community being unemployed and you know and blaming everybody. And I love what Andre said as well, because as you know as well, that the slogan for values-based leadership is transformation begins in me. And you know, I think we need to take that on board. And the younger we can start doing that, because we all of us adults can learn a great deal from the young people. I always say we're never too old to learn, and we're never too young to teach. So I think with that, the youngsters have got a lot of wisdom, but there is I mean, even in adults now, there is a lot of hopelessness. And as the saying say, where there is no hope, the people perish. But I love the other one better, where there's hope in the future, there's power in the present. Now, how do we get there? And for that, we need to have a conversation with ourselves first, because we have hope when we're youngsters, because we want to do all these kind of things, and then we every year, bit by bit, we get pushed down, and we see what happens around us. We see that the opportunities are not there, and we're going out in that big bad world, because it's full of negativity, you know, and we need to start excluding as much of that negativity in ourselves as possible. But that's very difficult, because, you know, crabs in a bucket, and, you know, we're surrounded by a circle of negativity all the time. So it's very difficult to get some positive feedback into our lives. But we now, as everybody's got their fingertips on all kinds of information in the world. And you know, it's not only about the TED Talks and the motivational speeches. I mean, I love them, because they do inspire me. But as Andre said as well, one size doesn't fit all. So I mean, for every person that leaves the school system, the hopelessness might be for similar things, but the way they could get hope is different. But we need to start surrounding ourselves with people who can lift us up rather than pull us down. I mean, as school leavers as well, we can just sit down and say, oh well, there is nothing. What can we do? Well, with that attitude, we need a positive attitude. I talk in self-care as well. You know, your attitude is so powerful. It can kill you and it can cure you and everything in between. That we need to start working. We need to, as in our families, in our schools, in all levels, we need to start encouraging a more positive attitude and a more positive behavior. Because that behavior is of hopelessness is something that so many have, and I believe it in the value of hope. It says, you know, when there is no hope, the last thing you can do is bury the people, because you know, it's all gone. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to bury them on the more negative emotions and everything that's said already. So it's, what can we do for them? It's be a beacon of hope. You know, we always say, be the change you want to see in the world. So we as adults need to be more positive to these youngsters coming out of the system, because how can they have hope when they go home to a family life, and that's at all levels, to a family life where people are complaining constantly about what is wrong. They are blaming people for everything that is wrong, and they're not accountable for their own life, for the person and looking in the mirror every time. And if we as adults need to be that example to our youth, because it is very easy to be influenced. As adults, it's easy enough, but even more so as young human beings. Still, the world is their oyster, but I mean, that oyster has been shut, and they can't get at that oyster anymore because of everything that's happening, and there is nothing they see that is good in their life. But if they can get, I mean, the role models. I talked about. I listened to a webinar about boys without dads, how they start to go and look at a role model, and if they can't find that role model in the house, they go to the communities, they go to the streets, and they end up in the wrong crowds, and it's easily done because they need somebody. I mean, there is terrible leaders in the past in history have shown us that people will follow any leader as long as they lead. So we as adults need to lead them down a better path. We as adults need to show them a better attitude. We as adults need to show them that there is hope, not by us constantly adding to it that that the world is so bad. And Yes, the world is what it is, but what are we going to do it? What are we going to do about it? And that's why also I love the values, because as a family, you can sit down and go around the values and install the values of forgiveness, of restraint, of listening, of respect, and of hope, and so many more into the young lives. Because it's not all, it's all lives matter, including young lives. And as I said before, if they come out of the school system, then we need to find a path. How, what is there for those that don't decide to go to a higher education level for all kinds of reasons, including lack of investment, or lack of possibilities and opportunities. But what can we do for them? Because I also talk into that there is a dire need for farming, because food production is halting around the world, and people want to become coders, they want to become all these kind of things, but there is IT and IoT need to combine in the farming anyway. So we need people to start looking in the communities and how can we provide for the communities. But we need to find something for those kids, for those young people to do. We're at the moment hopeless, is to give them hope by giving them significance, by giving them something to do that focuses outside of themselves. Because we always say, if you focus outside of yourself, the problems you have seem to be not half as bad. So let's give them something to do. Let's create opportunities in the communities that they can do stuff without necessarily earning an income at the beginning, but at least that the feeling that they're still worth it, that they still matter in the community, in life in general, that there's still something that they can do that offers a value to the people around them at any age.
Thank you very much, Jan. Appreciate that. And we are talking about how to change the direction of South Africa this evening, and specifically to small and medium-sized business owners, because you need to understand that you are the lifeline to the country, because it's not the government that are going to save this country or change the direction of this country. It's going to be small and medium-sized business owners and the people. To me, there is only one direction to choose here, and that is opposite to where we're heading at the moment. We believe the disconnect with entrepreneurship is that people are not given the proper training or the support to succeed. If we as business owners know and understand how painful this journey is, can you imagine how difficult it must be for someone without the resources or the understanding of the business processes? As we sit here listening to this webinar, I'm sure many of us have failed. Some of us have even failed 2 or 3 times. We are feeling the fear and the uncertainty of the future to come. Many of us are sitting in the position where we just don't know how. We would love you to join us as a part of this journey, where small business fit in through generosity. With a debit order of 100 Rand per month, we can change the lives of millions of people. When we think about that, it's less than half a bottle of good wine. Instead of drowning our sorrows because of where we are as a country, let's come together in a collaborative effort. And we, as the top or middle 7 million employed people in this country, can create the mindset that we are all in this together. In order for us to create a beautiful, thriving South Africa, we all have to play our part. And where do you fit in? Currently, we have all gone through a lot of pain and suffering. Let us work together to reduce this pain and suffering for the people around us. We, as the owners of small business and SMMEs, can add value to the lives of others, and we can uplift people in large numbers. We can no longer wait for the politicians and government. We remove blame and we replace it with accountability. So my ask of you today is that you are willing to step up for as little as 100 Rand per month and put your name down and encourage 5 or 10 other small business owners that you may know or be friends with to do the same. Because this is the focused, it's intentional, and there is impact. There is no way that we will fail in this. We can only grow where we do stand on this, or where do you stand on this? The New Nation Education Nonprofit Organization is helping to realign the mindsets of people to understand that collaborative partnerships are the key to moving South Africa forward. Building communities is not limited to one community, but it helps each community become their own economy, and it becomes sustainable. What is hurting the people in these communities? Unemployment and starvation. Properly skilled entrepreneurs generate income for quality education for their own communities. How we help these communities for as little as 300 Rand per month per household. They are not just getting nourishment for their family. We are helping them build the skills that they need to change their lives. For 300 Rand per month covers the training, the expert advice, the upgrading of the values of entrepreneurship, and guaranteeing a little bit of food for the home, as well as the education of their children. When we look at how starving and the lack or starvation and the lack of proper resources for education impact people's thinking, that is where we get all the anger and disconnect from. This is why people take to the streets and destroy infrastructure. Join us today and be a part of this journey. Where small business fit in is through the generosity with a single debit order of 100 Rand per month. We can change lives. Thank you very much for being here this evening. And you will find below the videos in the replay, you will find the connections of how to connect with us and be a part of the solution. 1 minute, please. Sorry, did I stop
Thanks.
that?
Yeah.
Andre, what's your 1 minute input
Thanks,
of the evening?
Thanks, Gunther. You know, I've been listening to everyone, and everyone has such great input from their fields of experience and expertise. But I think I must end off with 2 quotes that I've learned over these last couple of years. One is to add to Dr. Artie about the discipline, and it is as follows. It says, he who lives without discipline dies without honor. And it's something that we can all learn. And then the other one is, don't limit your challenges, challenge your limits. And these are the words that I've learned from youngsters at school, busy with their projects and overcome their challenges as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Andre. Dr. Artie, 1 minute, please give us a wrap up.
I think my quick wrap up, I'll just read a few comments from our Facebook comments. Liam says that as a young person, we need to have the value of prioritization. That fatherless homes lead to more crime due to lack of leadership at home. Together we're stronger. And Dinesh makes a point of the foundation of learning for the youth is basic human values and values-based leadership. Then you bring in social entrepreneurship so that people understand that their business must look at fixing social issues as part of the business model rather than a by the way. I thought I'd rather acknowledge in my closing comments the words of people who are experiencing this, interacting with people on a everyday basis, specifically to uplift the socioeconomic development and the injustices in this country. And my final word is that injustices is everybody's problem. not just somebody's problem, it's everybody's problem, and it's my problem to resolve. And if we become solution focused, then we can only grow because of that mindset. And if there's one thing that we can do is walk away with how can we add value to each other, join the New Nation education system, find them on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and see how you can add value and what you can do to connect and collaborate and walk alongside them. As Gunther, actually, as the founder, is looking at impacting thousands and thousands of schools, which equates to millions of young people, as well as the people of our country. So my call is going to be, don't just sit there and say it was a nice webinar to listen to. Connect with Gunther Wallendorf and the New Nation education system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arthur Roberts. Jan, a 1 minute wrap up, please.
Yeah, and I love what both of them have said already, and yourself as well, of course. I think that people of value people, and it is about values. But I think, you know, we need to, as Arthur said as well, we need to come with solutions. We know what many of the problems are, but what are the solutions? And it doesn't matter what your solution is; it might not be the right one, but we need to start becoming more solution thinkers. And for that, we need to become more intentional. My word for the night is become intentional. When you live an intentional life, which is very different to having good intentions, because we've all had them. But if you've got the good intentions, you might do something good occasionally. But when you live an intentional life, you do something good continually. And we need to continue these conversations. You need to get to the New Nation education. We need to get together more and talk about these important areas of life. And for everybody who's watching these, that they need to become intentional. Wake up every morning with an intentional day. So you're going to do something every day to improve your life. Because as we said earlier, when you improve your life, the lives around you will improve as well.
Thank you very much, Jan. And thank you all for being here. Yes, as I said, we are actually trying to move South Africa in a different direction. The purpose of the New Nation Education nonprofit company is to generate the funding to educate the more than 14 million school children in South Africa, while we help these 32 million people that need to earn a living become your customers. So please think about it carefully, understand what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and be a part of the solution. Thank you all very much for being here. Appreciate you guys. And next week, Wednesday, we will be talking about loss of customers. And as you saw this evening, we drift a bit from topic and we go into other things. And so each week we'll be coming back to this, but we try and keep a bit more specific about the loss of your customers and why you've lost so many over the last 10 years. Thank you all very much, Jan, Dr. Arthur Roberts, Moore Roberts, and Andre Schlemmer. Thank you all. Good night.